Good evening, MMJHL fans. Welcome to episode 13 of the MMJHL Podcast. I'm your host, Graham, the gshow Forsyth. This edition of the show, as always, is brought to you by Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Be sure to check out their store locations today in Brandon and Winnipeg to take a look in person for yourself at their great products, and maybe you may even consider purchasing something there, or maybe your plan is to go there and purchase something, and if you need to upgrade your hardware, it's a perfect place to do it. Make Canada Fasteners and Tools. Terrico, thank you to them for also sponsoring this edition of the MMJHL Podcast. Serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years in the agricultural industry. Be sure to check out their website for more information today at terico.ca. And of course, to Goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. Check out their website for more information on what they do at GordyTumilsonGoalies.ca. Thank you to all three of our sponsors for supporting us here on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca and for supporting Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League coverage here on the network. No guests for tonight's episode. It's going to be a shorter edition of the show, but what I'm going to have for you, even though I won't have highlights, I'll have scores to show you, upcoming games, the stats leaders, and some other stuff here on this abbreviated edition of the MMJHL Podcast. For episode 13, starting off right now with some updated scores for you guys and standings and whatnot. Alright, let's get into it, shall we? Taking a look at the scores from last week in the MMJHL. It was a bit of a different week since it was All-Star Game Day on Saturday. But yeah, crazy. February 11th was Super Bowl Sunday, and that's already like 2 weeks ago now. Crazy how time flies. But as you can see there, I mean, the St. James Junior Canucks continuing their winning ways against the Charleswood Hawks. For St. James, though, on the Monday, when they returned to play after the All-Star break after that Saturday, they lost 4-0 to the St. Boniface Riels. The Riels had the best week out of anybody after that Friday, winning 3 games in a row and beating some pretty good competition as well, as you can see it there. Yes, Stonewall not that high up in the standings, but playing really good hockey as the season has come to an end here, and yeah, going out and beating the Pembina Valley Twisters, a statement game, beating 2 of the top 2 teams in the league this past week. For the Fort Garry Twins, even though they got pummeled in that game against the Canucks by the scoreboard, they had a strong week outside of that. And it all started on that Friday with a 7-3 win against St. Vital, winning 6-0 against Charleswood. Super impressive. And yes, it was against the last place River East Royal Knights, but bouncing back after getting shellacked, responding that way on the scoreboard, that is getting shellacked. Shellacking the River East Royal Knights 7-0 on that last game of that Sunday. The Stonewall Jets, they lost in a barn burner to the St. James Junior Canucks to end off their week of play last week, and every game is going to be critical for them from now on. They got 2 games in hand on both the Twins and Raiders Junior Hockey Club. I just realized these are the wrong standings. My apologies. As we take a look here, hopefully this is about the same size as we put it in, as I just readjusted a bit here. There we go. Yeah, so the only 2 teams to clinch playoff spots so far are the St. James Junior Canucks and the Pembina Valley Twisters, as you can see there. But as for Stonewall, they got 2 games in hand on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club and are 4 points out of taking over them in the standings, 3 points out of a playoff spot. Right now, all games will be crucial for not only the Jets and the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, but for Fort Garry to finish their season strong. The teams in front of those 3, I guess, have a bit more breathing room right now, but it's still pretty tight. Big matchup coming up tonight in the league, by the way, as the St. Vital Junior Victorias playing at Southdale Community Center, taking on the Riels, as we'll have a new sole third place leader here in the MMJHL after tonight's action. Speaking of, the upcoming games in the MMJHL, we'll get to those in just a bit here, but want to, for anyone watching at this point, ask you guys what your favorite thing about this MMJHL season has been so far. It could be the way a team's been playing, the way a player's been playing. What's a playoff matchup too, as we're getting closer and closer, that you guys would be excited to watch, because I think it's pretty clear at this point that St. James will get the first seed and Pembina Valley gets the second seed. The only way St. James doesn't get that first seed is if they totally bottom out, but they're pretty close to clinching it, as they still got about a 12-point gap on Pembina Valley. But yeah, I mean, even though St. Vital and St. Boniface are tied right now at third place, like, what happens if one of those teams drops off near the end of this at this point in the season and finishes in sixth place and they play each other? Like, those are two teams that could very well be Final Four caliber, and one of them would be out in the first round. I'm also interested to see how Charleswood finishes their season, right? A team that's still top 5 in the standings, could still be top 4 in the standings by the end of this weekend. Even though, they've been on like a 6-game losing streak. Like, this is a team that's done a lot of good, that if they can start winning again, watch out. This is a team that has a lot of good makeup on it, that could be threats to, the top 4 teams that make it into the playoffs if they finish in the 5th seed there. I'm really interested to see what happens near the bottom of those standings there, who makes it in the Raiders Junior Hockey Club and the Stonewall Jets. Fort Garry very much in that battle still. I'd say Fort Garry's been the best out of those 3 teams lately, just considering how Stonewall kind of faltered a bit within this last week, even though they did lose to the best team in the league in the St. James Junior Canucks. St. Boniface also being them in there, right? So, yeah, like I said last episode, if you would have asked me a month ago or 2 months ago if the Raiders Junior Hockey Club would be in this position to be potentially out of a playoff spot, I would have been like, no way. But we're at that point in the season where they are holding on to that last spot still, but they will need a bit of help and need to win out to give themselves the best chance to make it through. And if they do make it through, well, they will have a very tough test in that first round against the St. James Junior Canucks, or whatever team ends up playing them. Also, want to hear from you guys, what team who wouldn't be top 4, who would be 5, 6, 7, and 8th ranked, which one of those teams do you think would have the best chance to make it through in a first round series against one of the teams that they'll be playing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments about that. We are going to take quick transition here, and then I'll be back. Well, maybe not so quick, but a transition here. Coming up, I'm going to give you guys some more updates, the stats leaders from around the MMJHL as well, and the upcoming matchups, the games tonight, and what's coming up this weekend, and really for the rest of February. Coming up on the MMJHL Podcast, episode 13, brought to you by Make-Hand Fasteners and Tools, as you've seen on your screen so far, Terrico and Goaltenders. Welcome back to the MMJHL Podcast, everybody, for episode 13, brought to you by Make-Hand Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Keeping this week's episode abbreviated, no guests on this week's edition of the show, but hoping to have some great ones on next week. Might have Ashton Haworth on the show. Of course, he's been lighting it up with the St. Boniface Riel since the trade, so gotta ask him, some questions about what the move has been like and how he's feeling now that he's a Riel. By the way, article out on last week from the MMJHL on gshow.ca and Sports in the Prairies under the MMJHL section on our blog page there, so be sure to check it out to read. Featured the Riels and Fort Garry Twins mainly in that one, as well as touched on all the other teams in the league that were in action. Didn't really go into the All-Star game, just touched on it in the beginning. That was a 9-6 win in that one. But yeah, be sure to check it out on gshow.ca. And as for the games coming up this week in the MMJHL, tonight full slate of games here on this Friday. Huge one, of course, as mentioned, the Riels taking on the Victorias for bragging rights on who takes third place after tonight's matchup. Charleswood taking on Transcona, of course, in a game that we're not broadcasting, but Charleswood looking to keep pace. 2 points behind right now of St. Vital and St. Boniface for third place. St. James taking on the River East Royal Knights, the battle of the best team in the league versus the worst team in the league. And of course, Stonewall at home taking on Pembina Valley in what is going to be a must win for them. Pembina Valley looking to put up more points, 2 more at 55, trying to get there. Then a full slate of games on Sunday. It'll be, well, some interesting ones. I'd say probably the ones to look forward to the most: St. James at home taking on Pembina Valley, and Charleswood at home taking on the Riels. All 4 of these teams top 5 in the standings. St. James and Pembina Valley, the top 2 teams going at it. And yeah, Charleswood and St. Boniface, depending on how tonight goes, this could be interesting in terms of who could stay in front of who, of course, depending on who wins that matchup. But then we're going to have some games sprinkled throughout the week here to end this month. Fort Garry taking on the Stonewall Jets on Tuesday night. In Stonewall, St. Vital and Pembina Valley going to be finishing off their game that wasn't finished back earlier on, back in 2023. Of course, due to the Zamboni making a gash in the ice that made the ice unplayable. So that one will start at 8:30 p.m. The first period has already been played in this one, with Pembina Valley having a 3-0 advantage on St. Vital. But St. Vital, we've seen them before come back from being down 3-0 on MMJHL game day. Just this is going to be a bit different since they don't have a period to get going. Only 2 and already down by a 3-goal deficit. Strange, but that's the way it has to happen since this game has to be played at some point. And February 28th is that day. We are going to have it broadcasted here, live streamed on gshow.ca. Pregame for that one will be at 8:20 or 8:25, and puck drop, of course, at 8:30. Be sure to check out the details on gshow.ca and on our social media pages down in the description of this episode for information on exactly what the details will be for that broadcast. But Thursday, Pembina Valley taking on Stonewall to end off the games here in February. Then we move on to March and the games for next weekend. But as for the took away the top, meant to take away the sponsor and put this one on goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. And speaking of goaltenders, in terms of the stats leaders here in the MMJHL, Noah Gilbert is the goalie's wins leader right now at 20, but right behind him is Logan Enns. 2 more games played, but he's at 18. Connor Murphy is tied for 3rd in wins, of course, there with Connor Stewart and Alex Pauls, which is pretty crazy considering Connor Murphy is a backup. St. James is that good this season, and Murphy's been able to make some good stops. Not the highest save percentage, has a great team in front of him, but a 908 save percentage, pretty solid nonetheless. Gilbert's is pretty ridiculous, a 926 save percentage. I guess you could argue it could be higher, but I think Noah Gilbert's been, you could say, the best goaltender in the league this season. He's backed it up by the stats, and 3 shutouts at that, too, leading everybody on this list. As for the points leaders in the MMJHL, it's Tyrone Willen still, and I believe he's going to finish with this unless he goes scoreless and one of the players behind him goes on a crazy run to end off the season. I think the distance is too great. We'll have to monitor this and see what happens, but with 5 games to go for Tyrone Willen, he's looking like he's poised to repeat as the scoring leader in the MMJHL this season for a consecutive year. As for the goal leaders, though, this race is tightened up quite a bit in terms of Tyler Rubini, of course, throwing his name into the ring. And yeah, I mean, 31 goals in 4 less games played compared to Tyrone Willen. Pretty impressive stuff. He's only 4 goals back of Rylan Hugen with 3 less games played than him. Nate Goodbranson, big time on this list, at 27 for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, and Sloan Tremblay also there for the Fort Garry Twins. Griffin Height also there along with Tyrone Willen for the Canucks on this list. As for the assist leaders, well, it's Tyrone Willen, but right behind him is his teammate, defenseman Brady Whiteley. It's been fantastic. Really did a great job, filling in for even more minutes as Rory Neal was recovering from injury at a point in this season. Brady Whiteley, of course, defenseman of the month for January. And yeah, now that Rory Neal is back, that blue line, oh man, scary for teams, knowing that Whiteley's having one of the best seasons of his career, as well, pairing that with a WHL level talent in Tyrone Willen. But Peyton Bateman still near the bottom of this list in the top 5, at the bottom of this list on the top 5. 2 less games played than Dean Gorchinski, who has 5 more assists than he does. For all of the MMJHL stats, be sure to check out mmjhl.ca to look at it in depth. We're going to throw it to a transition here to end things off on this abbreviated edition of the MMJHL podcast. But before I do that, just want to give a huge shout out to the Pembina Valley Twisters. Not only are they rocking it on the ice this season, but I guess on the ice as well, but off the ice here too. Fundraising setting a bar of 20 grand for cancer. The players and coaching staff went and all shaved their heads and ended up raising 22 grand, $22,000, 22 big ones, for a wonderful cause, raising it for funds to fight against cancer. Huge shout out to the Pembina Valley Twisters on doing a great thing, not only having success on the scoreboard, but having success doing some great things for the community, as the Twisters head shave for Cancer Care Manitoba 2024, I'd say, was a huge success. We are going to throw it to a transition here for one final time for MMJHL Podcast Episode 13, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools Terrico. And of course, on your screen, as you've seen here briefly, Goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. Once again, check out their website at gordytomlinsongoalies.ca for more information. Well, you made it to the end of the MMJHL podcast for episode 13. Yeah, it was a short one, everybody, but I hope you all came out of this, informed and educated on what's happening in the MMJHL. G-Show Productions, very excited to be back broadcasting for this league coming up on Wednesday night for those 2 periods of regulation that need to be finished in that game that got stopped due to the Zamboni making a gash in the ice at St. Vital Centennial Arena back in December, between the Vicks and Twisters. Excited to call that a puck drop, 8:30 for that one on gshow.ca. We'll have the pregame show at either 8:20 or 8:25, depending on what ends up happening, what we're feeling that night. Details can be seen on gshow.ca and on our social media pages. If you enjoyed this edition of the MMJHL podcast and want to stay up to date with when content like this is coming out, a great way to do that is checking us out on social media as well as on our website. But another one is to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't ever miss future episodes coming out. You get the notification, boom, you get MMJHL podcast episode number 14, for example, that will be coming out next week. Hoping to return to our regular scheduled recording date, but everything's kind of messed up right now since we're in the middle of broadcasting the MFHL playoffs. Round 1 is underway at this point. We've had the privilege to broadcast 2 games there already. through the first 2 nights and are doing so again this weekend. But we will for sure be broadcasting the St. Vital Junior Victoria's upcoming home matchup. Not against the Pembina Valley Twisters, but against the... I'm trying to remember who it is off the top of my head. Just pulling up their schedule for the St. Vital Junior Victorias. But yeah, we might have guests on from the Vics next episode. Who knows? Probably from some other teams. Stay tuned. We'll have all the details coming up. But yeah, it'll be March 3rd against the St. James Junior Canucks. So the defending champs will be in the house in an afternoon game at 2:15 p.m. on gshow.ca. Pregame for that one will probably be at 2:05, but we'll have details, of course, when the date gets closer to happening for that broadcast. Thank you to Mid Canada Fasteners and Tools Terraco and Goaltenders for sponsoring this edition of the MMJHL podcast. Once again, everybody, I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and saying so long. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have a safe weekend and enjoy all the great hockey coming your way if you're going out to see any of these games in the MMJHL. And until next week, when we'll have more updates, more news surrounding this great league in Manitoba. We'll see you then, everybody. Take care. See you next week.